I will call to order the Clackamas County Budget Committee for Tuesday, May 25. I will state for the record the schedule of upcoming events for the Budget Committee. Today, we convene at 8:30. On Wednesday, we will convene May 26 at 8:30. Recess around 4:30 or 5. And then at 5:30 evening, we have public testimony, a hearing for any of the public or people who want to come and testify about the budget and/or ask questions. On Thursday, May 27th, we will convene again at 8:30 and go until our budget is complete. I will now call for nominations for the Budget Committee Chair. Budget Committee Chair. I will nominate Wilda Parks as Chair. Do I hear a second?
I would second that.
The motion has been made to nominate Wilda Parks as Chair and seconded by Tom Feely. I will now call for a vote. Christina, please call the poll.
All right. Ann Lee?
Yes.
Tom Feely?
Aye.
Sean Caldwell?
Aye.
Jan Lee?
Yes.
Wilda Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Savis?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes. I will now pass the gavel to our chair.
Thank you very much, Chair Smith. It is now time to select a secretary for the Budget Committee. Do I
Madam
hear
Chair.
a nomination for secretary for the Budget Committee?
Madam Chair,
Sir.
I'd like to nominate Sean Caldwell to be the Secretary of the Budget Committee.
Okay, do I hear a second to that nomination? Jan Lee, second. All right, it's been moved and seconded to elect Sean Caldwell as secretary for the Budget Committee. All those in favor? Do we want to poll them always, Christina? Or just,
You could do voice votes for this.
Pardon me?
You could do voice votes for the election of
all right,
officers.
thank you very much. Yeah, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, so carried. Thank you very much, Sean, for accepting that responsibility. That is a 2-year term or until the Budget Committee term expires, whichever comes sooner. I would now call for a vote to appoint a citizen member to the Audit Committee.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to nominate Tom Feely as the citizen member of the Budget Committee to the Audit Committee.
is there a second to nomination for Tom Feely for the Audit Committee?
Seconded.
Very good. It's been moved and seconded to elect Tom Feely as our member to the Budget Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Thank you very much. At this point, we are ready to get into our budget considerations and conversations. Since we are doing a hybrid meeting, I just want to remind the folks that are sitting out in the room with the black tablecloths that you will need to hold your card up so that we know you have a question. And Christina's going to help monitor that. And then she's also going to monitor Ann Lee, who's on Zoom. And then I will do my best to watch all these buttons and make sure we get everybody in order. So, and Tootie is going to help me with that also, or Chair Smith is going to help me with that. So at this point in time, I would call on County Administrator Gary Schmidt to deliver the budget message.
Thank you, Chair Parks and members of the Budget Committee. Well, 2021 has been a year and a half like no other. That is certainly an understatement, isn't it? In Clackamas County, we have had 3 declared emergencies in 11 months. You've heard that frequently, but that is so impactful. Let me say that again. We've had 3 declared emergencies in 11 months. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, devastating wildfires, and a very devastating ice storm as well. In fact, we are one of only 2 counties in the whole state of Oregon that has faced 3 declared emergencies at one time, Marion County being the other county. Now, if you include the housing declared emergency that we've had in place for 3 years, then we're at 4, and we beat everyone else in Oregon. Sad, I mean, it's not a recognition we want, but that's the reality of how we have been operating this past year and a half. I'm so proud and impressed of our elected officials and our employees who showed incredible bravery and courage of continuing to serve the public during this very, very challenging time for all of us. You've heard this before, but I also want to say it again. Our employees slept on the floors of their offices so they could be on site during the wildfires and the ice storms to serve the public. We had employees who were evacuated from their homes during the wildfires and still showed up to work. We had employees who lost power during the ice storms and still showed up to work. Sadly, we had employees who lost their homes during the wildfires and still showed up to work. I'm so very proud and grateful for all of their incredible service to the public of Clackamas County. Despite all of these challenges, our staff has been working diligently to prepare for you the proposed budget you see before you today. This proposed budget is balanced as required by state law. And finally, as you've been requesting for years, it is sustainable. And I'll talk about that more in a second. The proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22 for general county services is $1,039,730,469, including the 7 county service districts led by the governing board of the county commissioners. The total county budget is $1,415,155,377. This is the highest budget of Clackamas County in our history, and the majority of that is due to the increase in federal and state dollars we have received this past year, mostly due to the pandemic, which I'll talk about in a moment. So our budget is sustainable, which means our revenues exceed our expenses, and we are projected to remain that way with all things being equal to what they are today. That's the caveat. With all things being equal to what they are today, we have a sustainable county budget. Of course, the challenges are when we face the next disaster, hopefully no more, but if we do, or if there are any other major unexpected changes, then all bets are off and we'll have to go back to the drawing board to ensure a sustainable budget. But at this moment in time, as of today, May 25th, your proposed budget is sustainable. This is mostly due to the $18 million in general fund reductions that have occurred during the past 2 fiscal years, which is approximately about 13% of the general fund at Clackamas County, which is around $135 million. That is significant, and that, in my view, is what has helped us get on the path to sustainability. Those were not easy cuts to make, and again, I'm proud of our departments and our staff and our elected officials who dug deep to find ways to minimize the impact to our public services, but find ways that we could help have a budget that is sustainable moving forward. The proposed budget you have before you, departments have lived within their means and in some cases below their means. Materials and services have remained flat. Allocated costs have remained flat for the 3rd fiscal year in a row. Departments did receive small general fund increases for their personnel costs, but that was the only increase that they received. I did not have to ask departments to make proposed scenario cuts this year because of the 2 years prior of those cuts. We have reached a level of sustainability. Again, most department budgets are status quo. In response to the 3 declared emergencies we have faced this past year, it has demonstrated to me, and I hope you as well, that our public safety services are key and critical to serving the public during these very, very challenging times. Every single county department has performed beyond the call of duty during this past year. There are 2 departments, though, in particular, that I am proposing investments to those 2 departments of increased general funds to help them support all of us when the next disaster strikes. First is to the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, an additional proposed general fund increase of $825,000, which would support body cameras for deputies. It does include a transfer of current courthouse security funding that is currently in the non-departmental account, moving it directly to the Sheriff's Office fund because they oversee that security already, and some other minor materials and services increases. Second is for the Disaster Management Department, an additional proposed general fund increase of $1.5 million, which adds an additional 4.5 full-time employees to that department and related materials and services expenses. Our disaster management department, they led every single disaster we had. They were understaffed. Other county department staff came and supported the Emergency Operations Center. I can't in good conscience recommend we don't offer an increase to that department. They've more than demonstrated the need is there to prepare us for the next disaster and the ongoing disasters. We're not done yet with COVID or our wildfire or ice storm recovery. Those are the only two increases I am proposing within your proposed budget. The other departments are mostly flat or status quo. All department budgets are now aligned with Performance Clackamas, specifically the board's 5 strategic priorities: build public trust through good government, build a strong infrastructure, grow a vibrant economy, ensure safe, healthy, and secure communities, honor, utilize, promote, and invest in our natural resources. I already mentioned the county has received some additional funding this year and ongoing from multiple sources from the federal and state government. First, starting in 2020 and continuing, we have received CARES Act reimbursement from the state of Oregon in the amount of $17.2 million. This is a reimbursement activity where we had to spend the money first and then seek reimbursement from the state of Oregon. This is unlike Multnomah and Washington counties and the city of Portland, which due to their populations being over 500,000, they directly receive allocations from the federal government. Clackamas County and every other county in Oregon did not. Therefore, we had to spend the money first and then ask for a reimbursement, of which the total amount allocated to us was 17.2. We're about to spend every penny of that, and we're doing our final reimbursement request here coming up in the next 2 months. The bigger news is we did receive $81 million from the American Recovery Plan Act funds, half of which, $40 million, was distributed to Clackamas County last Friday. It is now in our bank accounts. We are working with the Board of County Commissioners on how to disperse those funds following the very, very specific requirements of the federal act. There is a placeholder in your current budget for approximately $30 million of that amount. We'll clearly need to do an update to account for the $40 million, which we'll talk about here shortly. We really are not going to have that discussion as part of the Budget Committee this week because staff is still proposing recommendations to the board. The board has to give further guidance to staff. We'll have several policy sessions in the month of June to finalize how to disperse that first $40 million. The second $40 million will come 1 year from now in May 2022. As well, we are receiving and will receive federal FEMA funds for wildfire and ice storm reimbursements. The amounts are still to be determined. So those extra funds are why our county budget is the highest it's ever been. The revenues are the highest they've ever been. We're grateful for those funds. We realize most of those are one-time only. Therefore, we have to be very, very careful how to spend them so that we maintain a sustainable county budget. The county contingency is at the required 5%. Which is $19.1 million. Not a penny has been spent during our last year of 3 declared emergencies because we lived within our means. The county reserves is at the required 15%, which is $144.2 million. Again, not a penny of that has been spent during the past year of our 3 declared emergencies because we lived within our means. Our full-time employee count is at 2,290 employees, which is 18 full-time employees higher than the current fiscal year. This is mostly employees in public health, health, housing, and human services, which are coming from federal and state COVID dollars, which are continuing. So this is a very, very small increase, but I did approve, or I'm proposing those increases. Again, it's for the base level of service to help during the pandemic. Some future issues that we do need to consider, that you need to consider. Our property tax collection due to COVID-19 has been phenomenal this year. We're very grateful for that. We have to predict that will not continue. As you know, in my belief, that the public sector is about a 1 to 2 year lag behind the private sector. And this was the case when we had our housing bubble burst in 2008, 2009. As you all know, it impacted our budgets 2 years later. So we do need to be prepared that our property tax collection may decrease over the next 2 fiscal years. And I believe our budget is preparing for that this year and ongoing. The county courthouse, the Board of County Commissioners 2 weeks ago, I believe, did agree to support a public-private partnership model going forward to fund the county courthouse. There will be no taxes raised by the members of the public to fund this courthouse. We will live within our means. We will have to set aside savings for the courthouse over the next 3 to 4 fiscal years. The public-private partnership just buys us time. We still have to find a funding mechanism and not go to the voters to ask for more funds. And that is staff's direction by the board, and that is what we will implement. So you see the start of that in this budget, but really it will be the next 2 fiscal years where you will see the more savings we'll put aside for the courthouse project. That may impact ongoing services and program funding. That'll be a conversation we'll have with you ongoing in the year ahead Budget Committee. A new county jail is still on the Red Soils Master Campus Plan. It is now part of the board's strategic plan, Performance Clackamas. This beautiful document that's on some of your tables. I can't. Here we go. This document, and let me just read it. The goal says that by 2025, new and existing funding for the county's courthouse, jail, and law enforcement operations will be identified from federal, state, regional, and local funding sources. So a jail is still needed. That is still a priority of the board. It is not reflected in this budget today, but it is again direction by the board to staff. We need to start preparing for a new jail facility at Clackamas County. As well, 2 new libraries the county is committed to, the Oak Lodge Library and the Gladstone Library in partnership with the City of Gladstone. There is funding identified in this budget and moving forward for bonding that we can talk about more later. But of course, the cost of construction goes up the more that we wait. So I'm aware the state, through our legislators, are proposing some of the state ARPA dollars to help with both of those projects. We'll see where that ends up, but those are 2 commitments we have to make as well. Finally, the Equal Pay Act. We've been talking about this with you for 2 years now, Budget Committee members. We still have a little bit more work to do at the staff level. Our contractor, whom we hired, only took it so far, and there's still a bit more work to be done. We are anticipating that work to be done around August 2021, and at that point, we can make the financial decisions, or the board will make the financial decisions to implement the Equal Pay Act and its ramifications to our employees. There is $1.2 million in contingency that has been present now for 2 fiscal years. That remains. I am confident that those funds can accommodate the necessary changes we will have to make in the Equal Pay Act based on the preliminary results the Board of County Commissioners have seen. So again, I'm confident we have saved the money necessary to address the Equal Pay Act when that time comes, but not until August of this calendar year. With that, Budget Committee members, you have received a proposed budget. It is now up to you. You can accept this budget. You could make changes to this budget. I hope you don't reject it, but by the end of the week, you'll have a budget you'll recommend to the Board of County Commissioners for a final decision in June of this calendar year. I want to thank our incredible staff for their work, but before I do, a quick reminder of your authorities, Budget Committee members, for this week. All committee members, and there are 10 of you, 5 county commissioners and 5 members of the public. You each have 1 vote, and you each have equal authority during this week. Approval of any changes to the proposed budget, or approval when you get to that point, requires a majority vote, which is 6 votes. That's 6 out of the 10 voting members. That holds true even if 10 members are not present. So if only 8 of you are present, it still requires 6 of you to agree to any changes or to adopt or to recommend the proposed budget. Budget Committee members are prohibited from discussing or deliberating on the budget outside of the Budget Committee meetings. So please keep that in mind. I want to thank the staff, all county staff who've worked on this proposed budget for 6 months. Yes, 6 months. This is a culmination of their work. In particular, thank you to the finance team, Director Elizabeth Comfort, Deputy Director Krista Wolf, Sandra Montoya, our budget manager, and the rest of our budget team, Blaze Riggins, Jian Zhang, Roxanne Fisher, Priscilla Montoya. Fantastic work. Thank you so much for your excellent, excellent service, and you're here all week with me to help support the Budget Committee in their work. I will now stop talking and answer any questions the Budget Committee may have on the budget message.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, Administrator Schmidt. Paul is in queue, but I have a very quick, I hope quick, question, and then I'll turn it over to Paul, to Commissioner Savas. You've put money in the budget for the body cameras for the sheriff's office, and in the levy that was recently passed, there's also a note about body cameras, that would be part. So is that kind of the 2 of them will then satisfy the entire need for body cameras, or can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Thank you for asking that question. So the sheriff's levy, the body cameras proposed in the levy was for the positions funded by the levy only. It is not for all deputies in the sheriff's department. So the general fund that I am proposing for the body cameras makes the system whole, so that those deputies funded by the general fund will have body cameras. Those now funded by the levy that the voters approved will be funded by body cameras, so that now all will have body cameras.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. Commissioner Sardis?
Yeah, well, hello, everyone. Good morning. I just want to say, before I ask my questions regarding the budget message, I just want to say that if you see me walk, get up or leave or bend or whatnot, I've been dealing with 3 episodes in my back with nerves and herniated discs. So I'm a little bit fragile, so to speak. So I may be remote, depending on how long I can sit. The worst thing I can do is sit. I can do just about anything else, but I just can't sit or stand for a very long time. So, Gary, thank you for your budget message. On page 6 of your budget message, in the table, the very top, it says Clackamas County resources and requirements, in parents, parentheses, it says excluding agencies. So what is an agency by definition of this display of numbers here?
I'll ask Elizabeth to help. I assume that means the special district agencies, is that correct?
That is correct. There are 7 agencies listed on the bottom of page 2 of the budget message. The Water Environment Services, the Development Agency, North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, Library Service District, Extension and 4-H Service District, Enhanced Law Enforcement District, and Street Lighting District are not included in the Clackamas County budget before you.
Okay, so thank you for that. So that's the basis of my question. So at the bottom of that same table, and Gary, you verbalized this, that the FTEs moved from 2,290, or from 2,272 to 2,090, an additional 18. And I'm just very deliberately, so just indulge me for a minute. On tab 2, page 9, we have an increase of about 100 FTEs, most of them being in H3S. So I'm just kind of curious, if you look at the 2021 adopted and the 2021-22 adopted, you've got a delta of over 100 more FTEs. So please reconcile that.
So I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm not seeing that. On tab 2, page 9, I'm looking at the bottom column, the bottom summary, total budgeted full-time equivalents.
Right. So if you look at the 2021, it says 2,173, right?
Correct?
Okay. Go to the next one over with this proposed budget, and it's 2,290. That's a delta of 116.
So if I may interrupt, I apologize, Commissioner. Sandra Montoya, our budget manager, is going to speak to not several, but there are a few housekeeping issues that we want to review of correcting, and one of them is the FTE consistency throughout the document. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Do you want her to address that right now?
Yes.
So Sandra, would you please address the...
So Sandra Montoya, Budget Manager. One of the changes that we are calling out is that we were inconsistently counting. In some columns, we were counting the adopted budget FTE count, and then sometimes we were catching the year-end FTE count, and so they were being reported incorrectly. So as we were reviewing, we caught that, and we are now using year-end FTE count for past years and adopted for like the proposed year, or say the beginning number for the proposed year. So we will be making those changes and updating that and reconciling it throughout the book.
So what would be the correct number then?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can get
Is
that.
it 18 or is it over 100?
It's definitely 18. I know it's not over 100.
18 should be the number, because that's what I recall approving this year, so.
Okay, so that leads me to my other question, related question, and that is that she's not here, but I want to thank Jill for answering my question. I asked Jill for an organizational chart for Housing Authority with regards to the supportive services dollars coming in and any added positions, and I think there's 20, as at the date that she sent it here a few weeks ago, there were 28 unfilled positions, new positions, but unfilled. And so I don't know how that's going to be reconciled going forward, and not knowing with the flow of dollars, I'm not sure what we're going to do because of the discussion yesterday and this ongoing thing. So I just want to point out that not only did she share that information, but Jill Smith also shared that they have a lot of existing vacant positions, in H3S. So I won't speak to the vacant positions per se, but the new added ones are beyond 28. There's only 28 of them that are unfilled. So I just don't know how we account for that, or how that's accounted for, or where that's accounted for.
That is accounted for in the Housing Authority budget, which is which is separate. It's actually not part of this Clackamas County budget, so it would not, those 28 positions would not be included in our FTEs.
Okay, so back to my first question then. So it's not an agency, but so how do we recognize that? It should be either an agency, or it should be part of the general, or our budget. So if it's own animal, we should call it out.
It is its own animal, and we are working on that as I'm becoming familiar with the Housing Authority and working with Jill and Rod Cook and Jason Kirkpatrick. We'll be exploring how to pull them closer into the Clackamas County overall picture. They've been operating as an independent housing authority for several years, but we're looking to bring them in so we can be fully transparent with their operations and their FTEs and their functions.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you, Elizabeth. It's all fairness to my colleagues around the table. I'll end with this, and that is that last year, the Housing Authority was not part of our budgeting process. It's a separate process altogether. So as we're folding that in, thank you. So
All right, thank you.
that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Sean Caldwell and then Tom Feely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo what Gary was saying about the county employees being so dedicated. I worked for Multnomah County for 40 years, and that's been my experience, is that government employees care a lot about the work, put a lot of their own heart and soul into it, and I just want to echo your appreciation for them. I do. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, since Commissioner Savas brought it up, I found in reviewing the document that we're comparing 2021 amended budget to the 21-22 proposed budget. And I had to go back to the online 2021 adopted budget to really see what the difference is year over year. It makes it very difficult to visually see the entire changes that have happened in the last 12 months. So I'm not sure if that happened last year and I just missed it, but just so you know, it was difficult for me in looking at the amended budget. It doesn't call out what actually has happened. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Good feedback, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Feely?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo what Ms. Caldwell said, we've talked repeatedly in the past about involving the committee into your supplemental budgets. I mean, we don't, unless we independently go online and look at a board action item, we don't even see that. So it's like once we approve it, and then we have, smattering of regular updates, we don't see what you're doing with the budget, so until the next following year, and I think that's what Ms. Caldwell is trying to get at. Makes it a little confusing. And I will also echo what Gary said and what Sean said. I was involved in emergency management in the city of Portland in the incident command system and spent several nights at the EOC during the flood of '96, and city employees came together at that point and built the wall on the west bank of the Willamette River downtown, as well as staffing the EOC. And it was just like people pulled together. It was good to see. So I'm proud of the Clackamas County employees. So Gary, if you don't mind, I'd like to probe a little bit on the meaning of sustainable budget. It's the first sentence of your message, and it kind of stood out at me because I've been following the courthouse discussion, and I know you're aware that you're going to have to make reductions in the future, but it's hard for me to let go of a financial policy that actually probably both previous employers had, that we would balance within the 5-year financial plan. We would not adopt a budget for next year without knowing that we were in sync for the 5-year period. That's not the case here, and that troubles me. And although I was glad to hear about the jail being on the schedule, but that's another huge potential cost item for which there's no plan. I mean, there's plan, but we all know how difficult it is to reduce the budget. So that's a concern of mine, and I think going forward, I would advise you, it's not our role to establish financial planning for the county, for the county. I started to say city, I still do it.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
Tom, can you
Oh,
speak into
yeah,
your
I'm sorry.
microphone? I'm going to urge everybody, because our masks were muted.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if you could just repeat that last line, thank you.
What I said was, I mean, it's not our role to develop your financial policies, but I think that's something that deserves a look at, that you balance your 5-year plan. Like the one we looked at a month or so ago is a big red number at the end, in the final year. And certainly you all acknowledge that that red number needs to be filled somehow, but there's no process yet identified on how to do it. And I'm thinking it's going to be very difficult. And some of the services that are in this proposed budget, they're going to have to be reduced. So
Right.
that's what I mean, I'm not saying it's not sustainable, but, it depends on your definition.
So in our,
Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead,
President.
Elizabeth.
I was going to say, in our 5-year forecast that we presented at our last Budget Committee meeting, the operational budget is what we are referencing as sustainable, with all things remain the same. The courthouse, now it's been approved to move forward with the P3 model. We did put in, say, below the line in our capital expenditures, what we have estimated as the first 2 years of payments.
Right, and I saw that.
Right, but we're trying to, one of our goals was to make sure that our new revenues met or exceeded our current expenditures. And so we've been focusing on that. We have brought those into alignment, and that is demonstrated in the 5-year forecast. You're absolutely correct. We do have work ahead of us now that we're moving forward with the courthouse, to look into our operations and into potentially new funding to offset those courthouse costs beginning in
And
year 4.
That's in here somewhere.
No, we do not, that is not included in this 12-month plan.
No, I know it's not, but what I'm saying is what is budgeted in here is where you're going to be looking for the savings for the courthouse.
No, we're not, there is not any of that included in this, because the budget was put together prior to that decision on May 5th. And so we are beginning our planning and our activities in this fiscal year, looking at our program profiles and we have a committee that is dedicated to looking at resources and opportunities for the jail and the courthouse and the public safety
And-
needs.
But the programs.
If I may, also, committee members, I want to be sure that as much as possible, we stay on time and on track and on time. And we have one more item from Administrator Schmidt, and perhaps in the discussion that's going on right now, if there's additional documents or something that, staff could provide at a later date and get us, since it's not actually in this particular budget, so.
I just want to say, Tom, I appreciate that feedback. I accept your feedback. Yes, we have work to do, and our
Yeah.
staff's doing a fantastic job, and Elizabeth and Sandra are blowing up our processes to make them more efficient and better serving the public, so all that's in progress. But thank you. I accept your feedback.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good comments. And Jan Lee, you have a question?
I'll hold my question until later, and
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. And Administrator Schmidt, you have one item for us
Yes,
before we move on to our department budgets.
First, before that, Sandra or Elizabeth, you want to mention the errata, the changes sheet?
Yes. So before you on your desks and also by email, we sent out some updates to the published proposed budget, and I just wanted to go over it very quickly. Budget law does state a requirement for us to provide it to you in writing and also to go through it verbally. So the first item that we wanted to call out is if you look at your budget document, the ending balance in 2021 does not match the beginning balance in 21-22, and we will be correcting that. That change is a $479,000 change, and we will make it in the next printed version or the next published version. We also have a correction to capital projects. In the system, it was put into capital outlay. In the system, it was put into reserves for future expenditures, but when we entered it into the spreadsheet, we put it into capital outlay. So that's just an adjustment that we need to make. And then document-wide, in the fiscal year 2021 projected column, we reference unappropriated ending fund balance, and that is incorrect. For those of you familiar with budget law, there is no unappropriated ending fund balance in a projection. That only exists in a budgeted column, so we're going to be correcting that. The real term is revenues less expenses, and so it's very simple correction. It won't change the numbers, but it will change the presentation. We will also be correcting some dates for debt maturity on the reader's guide. Thank you to one of the Budget Committee members that called that out. We appreciate your careful reading, and we will correct those numbers. The correct maturity date should have been 2033 for one of the debt issuances and 2040 for the other. So the last item, or last two items I've got, is item number 5, and it's changes to the FY21 amended budget. We want to call out, we just had a supplemental budget change last week, last Thursday, the 20th, and we will have another one coming in June, and both of those supplemental changes will be incorporated into the published document. And the very last item that we have is the correction we called out a little earlier, and that is the FTE counts that will be updated throughout the document. So with
Thank
that,
you.
if there's any
Commissioner
questions.
Savas, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to be sure Sandra was finished. Thank you, Sandra. So I just want to build on Tom Feely's point. I noticed that the word structurally sound, I think, one would presume that'd be a 5-year window and a glide path, and how, in this case, for our case, a glide path on how we get there. But in recognition of the what Administrator Schmidt had shared about making adjustments as we go, and with all of the other funding that's coming in, vulnerabilities and all the emergencies, I think we're flying this plane as we're building it. What gives me a little bit of pause is simply the fact that these, even yesterday, we're talking about people throwing out the idea about bridge funding, something that we don't even really know what that looks like. And also that all of the CARES Act money and the ARPA money and all this assistance is contingent upon us meeting the criteria, because if we don't meet the criteria, we need to backfill that. So we got to be extremely careful because of our situation. I can't speak for our neighboring counties that are getting some of these dollars or whatnot, but I think it's incumbent upon us to realize our unique situation and be very mindful as we go forward, and the Board of County Commissioners being mindful, I'm sure they are, that we need to calculate or consider that if we don't get reimbursed because of expenditures that we're not eligible, that we got to build in some mechanism to take care of that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Administrator Schmidt?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Parks. So Budget Committee members, I emailed you 1 week ago that I would bring to your attention the compensation for elected officials, in particular the compensation for the county assessor. At your April 20th, 2021 budget meeting, you did receive the report and recommendation from the Compensation Board, who recommended salary increases for most elected officials, but there was a discussion and perhaps a disagreement about the assessor's salary. The market study, as you recall, did not include Washington and Multnomah counties, although it did in prior years. And so therefore, the assessor only received the cost of living increase, not a salary increase, and was the only elected official of the county's elected officials that did not receive an increase. I talked with the assessor, with Chair Smith, and our finance director, and the staff from Human Resources since your meeting on April 20th. And as your budget officer, I am recommending to you that you do bring the assessor's salary up to par with the other elected officials and provide the assessor's position an 8.2% increase in salary. And the attachments I emailed you last week, it had the market assessment that was updated to include Washington and Multnomah counties, and that's where the 8.2% number is coming from. I also presented to you a grid that showed what this financial impact would be. If you approve it, it would be a total of an addition of $18,476.52 to the assessor's budget to reflect this change. We absolutely could afford this. We have the money in our funds to pay for this if you agree. So as your budget officer, I am recommending that if you are willing right now to have a discussion and a potential vote to approve an 8.2% increase to the county assessor's salary.
All right, thank you very much. Chair Smith.
Thank you for that, Gary. It had come to our attention that the elected officials in the county, based on the Compensation Board's recommendation, were making less than our counterparts for similar work in other jurisdictions. While I voted no on the overall package, and maybe some other commissioners did too, the motion passed. But rather adroitly, our county assessor analyzed the information and the study that had been put forward to us. And I do feel at the time that she may have been overlooked and or quite possibly discriminated against. And she was the only one that did not receive a raise. During the deliberations and before, I assembled a group of electeds in Clackamas County with myself for them to freely speak about the raises. And most all of them, as you know, foregone raises in the prior year because of COVID. However, what many of them have told me, these department heads, had been working constantly for the last year, a lot of times without staff support, 7 days a week. And they were exhausted. 2 of them said, I'm going to be aging out of this position. A new hire will come and replace me. We need to be competitive that we get the best possible person to take over my department. And you can guess who those are. I don't need to tell you that. Quite generously, Sherry Hall, our county clerk, says, I have a huge surplus in my budget because of all the recordings that are happening in the county, because there's a lot of refinancing going on and real estate sales. And her budget was quite generous. And she says, I will pay out of my budget for all of the raises. Yes, her surplus goes into the general fund, but I thought that was quite magnanimous. And so that was the decision that we made going forward on this. And I know for the public out there who have really, really suffered through the pandemic and hardship due to the ice storm and hardship due to the fires, and I am part of that. They're probably looking at us, oh wow, government gave themselves raises and we are with not. I am very mindful of that, and I have huge compassion and sorrow for any of our citizens and residents out there. However, this is a decision I believe we have to make and move forward on it, because after all, Clackamas County government is the government that provides services to every single person in the county, and our citizens expect us to perform, not only on the regular, every day-to-day stuff, but especially when we have times of crisis and emergency declarations that we've been through 3. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Feely?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the salary adjustment to the assessor that Mr. Schmidt outlined.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was it, Sean? Thank you very much, Ms. Caldwell. It's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation and increase the salary. Is there any other discussion?
Sonia?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Parks. I just have a question, Gary. I really appreciate you sending us the information on May 17th. I'm just interested to know if the Compensation Board also participated in this.
They did not. They finished their work and made a recommendation to you, Budget Committee, on April 20th. Their work is then finished. They have disbanded as a committee until next year, when they will review salaries again. My memory is, and I confirmed with the Human Resources staff, you may recall the chair of the committee, the Compensation Committee, was open to feedback about reconsidering the counties that would be included in the market study. So to answer your direct question, no, they were not involved, but that would not have been their role to be involved because they finished their work prior to April 20th.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? I'd like to call for the vote. Shall we do a roll call
Yes,
since it's
please.
financial?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Ann Lee,
Yes, approve.
Tom Feely,
Aye.
Sean Caldwell,
Aye.
Jan Lee,
Aye.
Chair Parks,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
and Chair Smith.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Motion
Thank you. So we will
passed.
add this to the budget. So already we've amended the budget, but we'll make sure that's documented in the budget. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.